When I was 16, I was hitchhiking cross country, and I did it many times because I thought in movement there's life, because I was better than where I was coming from. And I pulled this offside, this little gas station on the side of the road, and they had, rattlesnakes, and see the two-headed cow or the three-headed snake or whatever it was. And they had, like pumas in there that were dying of old age. They'd never been out of this cage. And they had a gas station and all that. And I walked in and said, geez, I'd love to work for you if there's any job. And he had a daughter of the same age as me. And we kind of liked each other. I mean, youth tends to like youth, it was that kind of thing. Nothing more, nothing happened. But he saw us like kind of charming each other. And he said, listen, amethysts come up right after the winter, and they bust out through the ground, and you can go out and collect that amethyst worth a lot of money, and I'll take you up there right where I know they're going to be coming up.
Which was sort of remote.
Well, it was at the foot of the Oro Grande Mountains. I mean, it was freezing. But he gave me 3 potatoes and a book of matches and dropped me off there. I said, I'm serious, 3 potatoes? What do you think? I'm not even Irish, I'm a Viking. So it's true. And they said, if you get really cold at night, bury yourself up to your neck in sand. Okay. At 16, I was pretty, adventurous and naive, and suddenly it got so cold that I thought, something's wrong here. I think I'm going to die. And I looked, like about 15 miles away, you could see it at the foot of the mountains, a road down there with the lights of cars. But it was like, like a thread. And I walked through the night to get there. And I got a ride. Being 16, I looked harmless, and I didn't shave. And I left, and I never looked back. And then years later, I did Omen 2 outside of Chicago, and they put out a book.
And how many years later? Is it like 20 years later?
Oh, no, yeah, about 20 years, yeah. And I'm driving back to California in my car, and I see that same gas station, but now there's a 4-lane highway there, where there used to be just a 2-lane. But I recognize it, so I stopped, I pulled in, went off that ramp, pulled in, and I walk in and I go, wow, do you remember me? And the woman, she went, no, she didn't recognize me. And I said, oh, my name's Lance Henriksen. I was here, And she went, oh shit. It was as if I had fired a .45 into the ground. She went, oh my God. And she told me this story that her husband, they had a giant search looking for my dead body, and that he was always considered that he killed me, but they never found the body. And I signed the book, and I gave it to her, and I went, I'm so sorry, man. I tried to explain some part of it, but she was already into a deep sort of depression. And I thought, I got my car and went on, and all the way to California I kept thinking, was he trying to kill me? I thought of all the scenarios of, yeah, maybe he was. 3 potatoes and a book of matches. That's not. At the Oro Grande Mountains, there was still snow in the mountains. It was like, and amethyst. How much is amethyst worth? It's shit. Everybody in this room can have an amethyst ring. But that's just one story. My life was on the road. And when something happened, it happened as dramatic as that. But for the rest of the time, it was as if I was always there before something happened or after something happened. So I was very acutely aware of life, from the perspective that I'm talking from. So when I did Near Dark, one of the things I did, there's a great thing that happened, and it was freaky afterwards. I thought about it. I picked up a hitchhiker on the way to, start shooting, and I was already trying to figure out this role. And this guy got in the car with me, and he weighed about 220, a lot bigger than me. And I said to him, I'm already into the role. I looked at him and said, you roll me a cigarette. And I throw him a bag, throw him a bag of, it was called Drum. I said, roll it. And it wasn't even, would you roll it? Do you mind rolling it? And I was like, roll it, roll it. So he rolls the cigarette and he gives it to me, and it looked like shit. So I threw it out the window. I just said, what the fuck is that? And he's looking at me like, what? And I said, try it again. And I said, put some music on. And he turns the radio on. I'm ordering him all over the fucking place. So, this guy could have killed me. He could have crushed my head. You know, he had big hands. He's trying to roll a cigarette with his big, all the fingers look like thumbs. You know? And so I said, what kind of music is that? That's shit. Turn that shit off. So he finally rolls me, and I take one puff and I go, well, fuck this. And finally he's so nervous because of my staring at him. When he wasn't doing something, or when he was doing something, I was staring at him like he was a meal, you know. I wonder what I should take his face, his ear, what do? I rip his throat out? You know, all those thoughts were going through my head, but, you know, in an artistic way, you know. So then finally he says, this is where I get out. It was the first lights he could possibly see on the road. He said, that's where I'm going. That's where I want to get out. So we pull over under this light, and there's nothing else out there. And I realized, I said, why are you hitchhiking, man? And he said, oh, I'm broke. And so I took all the money I had in my left pocket. I had more in my right. I gave him the money. I felt so guilty for torturing this bastard for like probably 70 miles. Just 70 miles of real Jesse Hooker horse shit. You know? And so that was my voyage to go to work. But you can see where a guy might have left me in the desert to die. Why don't I just play at this and see what happens?
Well, you know that guy